It is 10:54 in the morning right here in England, and I just want to say a very good morning to every single one of you tuning in. Thank you so much for being a part of the show. It's such a pleasure to have you on board, and I just want to remind you that this is, of course, the Chat Trap with me, Jamie, where we talk about all things gossip, but where we all talk about social issues, where we talk about things that are serious that needs to be addressed, and conversations that need to be, need to that we need to have. With that being said, before we move on to anything, I do want to remind you to download our app because it's available absolutely free of charge on iOS and Android. So if you haven't downloaded our app as of yet, make sure that you do that for sure right now, and you can take us with you wherever that you go. Now, with that being said, the topic of discussion today is quite interesting to say the least. Like I said before, I feel like it's something that we learn at school. Poverty is something that we hear of quite often, but most of us don't really understand the true essence of it. Okay. It's become such a normal word that we have a tendency to just let it slip under the carpet and we don't really try to analyze what we can do to make it better. Now, me for example, for the longest time, when people would talk about poverty, when they would talk about afflictions and a collapse in an economy, the first thing that I do think of is, oh, that's not our job. That's something the state has to do, that has to be done through a systematic way, right? But today, the reason I wanted to tackle this a topic of discussion, or why I wanted to talk to you about this, is simply because I truly believe that at the end of the day, little things that each of us could do, or proactive stances that we do take on a day to day basis, can actually increase the quality of living, the standard of living of every single person, not just in our country, but on a global level. Now, that's what I did want to talk about. But before we get into all that, let me just tell you what exactly poverty is and what's the current global situation with regards to poverty and the poor. Now, the global extreme poverty rate fell to 9.2% in 2017 from 10.1% in 2015. So that is equivalent to 689 million people. Let me say that again, 689 million people living on less than $1.90 or pounds in a day. Now, at higher poverty lines, apparently 24.1% of the world lived on less than $3.20, according to the UN, according to the World Bank statistics, and 43% on less than $5.50 a day in 2019. Now, in 2018, 4 out of 5 people lived below the international poverty line and they lived in rural areas. Now, see, all these statistics, obviously, at the end of the day, when we do hear it, it sounds really overwhelming. And it sounds like a lot of people are actually having a hard day, that they're struggling, living their day to day lives. But what I do want to talk about today is little things that we can do to make sure that in our economy in itself, little things that we can do to ensure that the poverty line does rise, and everybody in general would have a set standard of living. Now, with that being said, before I move into anything, I the reason I decided to talk about this, to be fair, is because of this quote that I saw, and it was by Nelson Mandela, if I'm not mistaken. And this quote was absolutely amazing. And when I heard that, that's when I realized that there's so much that every single one of us can do to tackle the social issue of poverty. Now, this quote, it goes something like this, okay? Poverty is not an accident like slavery or like apartheid. It is man made and it can be removed by the actions of human beings. So basically, what Nelson Mandela says that poverty at the end of the day is man made and it is something that can be removed by our actions. Now, what's crazy is that a lot of us that live in the UK, when we hear the word poverty or when we hear somebody speaking about poverty, the first thing that we do think of is developing countries. We tend to think of, people living in or not so developed countries, maybe in Africa, maybe in Asia. But something that we don't tend to understand is that in the UK itself, according to statistics, more than 4 million people in the UK are trapped in deep poverty. And this is the latest study that was done. And apparently, more than 4 million people in the UK are trapped in deep poverty, meaning that their income is at least 50% below the official breadline, locking them into a weekly struggle to, say, afford the most basic of living essentials and their day-to-day struggles. Now, I feel like when I did hear the statistic, I obviously knew that that was poverty for sure. But the fact that the numbers have consistently risen since 2015 is absolutely crazy. And what's insane is that this year or last year, together with COVID, poverty levels in the UK in itself have doubled. Now, see, we obviously know, or we've acknowledged the fact that because of the pandemic, a lot of people did lose their jobs, a lot of people lost their livelihoods, and it's not been easy. But the numbers, when you actually look at it, is absolutely crazy. And it's something that most of us that do live in middle class families, middle to upper class families, haven't really realized. Which is why I thought, even though it is a hard conversation to have, like I said earlier, it is very serious and it is not the most comfortable thing to talk about. But conversations like this are so important to be had, just because even when it comes to our children, even when it comes to the little ones, I feel like at the end of the day, only with information, only with this knowledge, do we get the urge, or do we get the necessity that we actually have to do something, take some proactive stances to change the situation that is going on in our country. Which is why I wanted to keep you updated with the statistic side of poverty in the UK and the global poverty situation as well. Now, I have a lot more interesting things to share with you, so make sure that you keep it tuned right here on Relax Radio.